Cuyahoga County Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, November 26, 2024 is now called to order. Andrea, would you please call the roll?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 1:38 p.m. As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Schron. Mr. Schron is absent at the moment. Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner is absent at the moment. Ms. Stevens is absent at the moment. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Mr. Byrne.
Here.
Council President Jones.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Andrea. Has anyone signed in for public comment?
Yes. Will Tarter.
Good afternoon, President Jones, members of County Council, the administration, and guests. My name is William Tarter, and I am a resident of Broadview Heights. I'm here as a private citizen and not representative of my employer or any other civic entity.
Is your mic on, Will?
Oh, I apologize about that. There we go. All right. Good afternoon. William Tarter, resident of Broadview Heights. I'm here today just to share a couple of thoughts about the major capital repair funding item that you have before you today. I've been attending the Gateway Economic Development Corporation meetings for over 8 years now, and so that I can try and educate myself as best as possible on the structure of these sports deals. I've come to County Council several times over the years seeking to raise awareness about the syntax shortfall that we are discussing today. The first question is that back in 2014, when the syntax was on the ballot, voters like me were told that the syntax will last for 20 years. The money is divided evenly between the three teams, and if we didn't pass the syntax, that money would have to come from the general fund. And now, about 10 years later, that syntax is no longer sufficient to cover it. So my first question is to better understand how the amount of the request in the estimates were calculated to go to voters. So how were voters, when we voted on the exact amount, how was that amount calculated? And so that way we can have an understanding of what is going to be needed to meet these obligations. And then moving forward, I think it's very important for the public to have an understanding of what to expect in terms of the major capital lease obligations on these facilities. And I was very thankful, I'm sorry, just a quick thought. Thank you. I was very thankful to hear at the last Gateway meeting that they're going to do a facility assessment from now through the end of the lease. And as a member of the public, it would be extremely helpful for us to understand what the major capital funding expectations are for the next 10 years for fiscal planning purposes. And that way we can brainstorm ideas on how to meet those needs. For me, I think the most equitable way is some type of ticket surcharge, but I also understand there are other ideas that have been floated out there. But for me, for people who go to the facility, helping to pay to maintain the facility seems to be the most equitable option. So thank you for the opportunity to share those thoughts, and I'll look forward to continuing to follow this issue closely. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion for today's meeting.
All right, thank you, Andrea. Items referred to committee, the confirmation hearing time. Again, welcome to the confirmation hearing at which council will consider the appointment of Alexa Beeler, again, as our Inspector General of Cuyahoga County for an unexpired 4-year term ending December 31, 2028. For a little background, the agency of Inspector General, as well as the powers, duties, and qualifications of the Inspector General, is established in the Cuyahoga County Charter with further duties and responsibilities set forth in the Cuyahoga County Code. Ms. Beeler has been serving as Inspector General since April of 2022. The legislation before us today would extend Ms. Beeler's term until December 31, 2028, upon council confirmation. The hearing process will proceed as follows. The nominee will be offered an opportunity to address her qualifications, motivations for seeking the position, and outlook and plans regarding the office. Council members will then be offered the opportunity to ask questions of the nominee. We will do so in rounds, allowing each council member to ask 2 questions per round until all council questions have been answered. Once all questions have been asked, we will entertain a motion to recommend Ms. Beeler for second reading at tonight's council meeting, and then third reading approval or rejection at the December 3rd council meeting. Thank you, and let's begin.
I'm going to read the item into the record. Resolution 2024-0372, confirming the county executive's reappointment of Alexandra R. Beeler upon her taking the oath of office as Inspector General of Cuyahoga County for the 4-year term ending December 31st, 2028.
All right, thank you, Audrey. And so, Ms. Beeler, you can address council now.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexa Beeler, and I am the Inspector General for Cuyahoga County. Thank you, Council President Jones and council members, for the opportunity to discuss my qualifications and my hope to continue to serve as Cuyahoga County's Inspector General. I'm a lifelong resident of Cuyahoga County and have been a dedicated public servant since I began my legal career in 2009. I was a judicial staff attorney for over a decade before beginning my nearly 3 years as an assistant law director in the Cuyahoga County Department of Law. Working for a judge and then the law department prepared me well for my current role as Inspector General. I brought with me my knowledge of the county's unique form of government and the county code, as well as my fine-tuned ability to hone in on what facts matter to prove an allegation, and then carefully and objectively analyze all the facts and the law to make decisions that are right, sometimes with heavy implications, without any personal agenda or outside motivating factors. I have served as Inspector General since 2022, and during this time, there have been marked improvements in agency operations. When I started, the agency had over 175 open matters, and now we average about 35. And that is not because we have any less work. In fact, we have more work than ever with the same amount of team members. For instance, the agency went from averaging 39 ethics opinions in a semi-annual period to averaging 101 opinions for the last 4 reporting periods. We have completed more investigations each half than the pre-2022 average. Additionally, we became current for the first time ever with our contractor background checks, and we have developed and expanded our data analytics program, which we utilize for individual investigations as well as for providing continuous monitoring over certain high-risk county functions. The work has not stopped while we have continuously added new initiatives. What has changed is our ability to effectively and efficiently handle the continuous workflow due to our incredibly improved processes and procedures, including implementing transparency and accountability measures to help gauge how we are truly performing as an agency. I am so honored to work alongside my exceptional team, whose perspectives shaped our processes and approach, and whose diligence and dedication put it all into action. Of course, while timeliness and efficiency are important, they mean nothing without quality. We have increased collaboration and guidance to ensure the highest quality work product. Our first priority is always to deliver opinions and reports that are accurate, objective, thorough, fair, supported by evidence and law, and analyzed and written with the highest degree of professionalism and care. We prioritize excellent customer service, which we know is essential in promoting trust in our agency and ultimately in county government. It has been a privilege to serve as Cuyahoga County's Inspector General. I want to thank County Executive Ronayne for the honor of being renominated. I want to thank my husband, John, and our 3 beautiful children for their support and patience. I want to thank you all for this opportunity and for your consideration, and I welcome any questions you may have.
All right, at this time, if there are any questions from council? All right, we'll start at this end. Go right ahead, Councilwoman.
All right, through the chair to the Inspector General, how many years has it been? 4 for you?
It's been almost 3, so I filled an unexpired term.
Okay. And just when we initially had the Inspector General department, there were some, I don't know, bad debts or things out in the community. Has that all been caught up and everything nice and tidy now? There were individuals that I guess couldn't do business with the county For some reason, has all that been caught up?
So I think that's a combination of two different areas that we have looked at. The first being our economic development loans, which you may be referring to,
yes.
because the agency did do a lot of work previously with the economic development loan program. The Department of Development has since added loan personnel that have really buttoned up that process and making sure that the county is being repaid for its loans. So we have withdrawn a lot of our oversight, actually most, if not all of our oversight into that or that area, at least at this time. And as far as individuals being unable to do business with the county, that would be more of the debarment, our debarments that we do have, and there are still individuals and entities that continue to be debarred based on various violations of the county's debarment code, which the Agency of Inspector General does administer.
But that percentage is not great, though. Come down.
Definitely, there are currently 23 contractors that are on our debarment list.
How do they go about, does that mean, I know you said there's various reasons why they're on the disbarment list. How do they make their way back? Are they given a way to recovery, so to speak?
Do you mean a way to continue to do business?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So depending on the offense that is, or the violation as to, which section of the debarment code they have violated or that we have reasonable belief to believe they have violated, it would result in either an 18-month, a 3-year, or a 5-year debarment. So at the expiration of that debarment period, they would be allowed to do business with the county once again.
Thank you.
Councilman Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. President. Inspector General. So there was a fraud, what they call it, waste and abuse course that everybody has to take
Yes.
in any of the public realms. I know we did it in a group here, but I had to do it in another job too. So I assume that it's either ongoing or is it completed yet?
So through Council President Jones to Councilman Kelly, that training was administered by the Department of Human Resources, but I have been told that over 95% of the county employees have completed that program.
Okay, so how about ethics policy manual? Is that need to be updated? Is it current? Do you see any additions needed?
So for the comprehensive ethics manual that the Agency of Inspector General is required to compile and put on the county's website, that we did revamp this year. So that is current and that is posted online for county employees to reference should they need to do so. Additionally, the Agency of Inspector General is responsible for the county's contractor registrations, and so when a contractor registers with our agency, we additionally provide our contractors with a link to that comprehensive ethics manual.
If I may, just one more. Thank you, sir. So in the area of the county's ethics ordinance, is there any of those that need a review? And is there any in a recent investigation, some you probably can't talk about out there? I know there's pretty disturbing in the news right now about the sheriff's department, and that I would imagine that's an ongoing investigation.
Yes, that is a fair statement. But as far as the ethics ordinance, I do think that our county ethics code is strong. And even if there were no changes to be made, because it incorporates the 3 Ohio Revised Code sections that comprise state ethics laws, I do think we are covered. I think that it could be worth considering just really highlighting some specific provisions of the state of Ohio's public contract law. We do have one provision in our county ethics code that prohibits an elected official or employee from engaging in a public contract with the county to sell goods or services to the county, which is one of the sections of the state of Ohio's public contract law. But also included are some not so obvious prohibitions that I don't think are readily apparent, that come up actually all the time. For instance, the same codes, the same Ohio Revised Code section that prohibits somebody from having a financial interest in a public contract also prohibits somebody from having a fiduciary interest in a public contract. So if you sit on the board of a nonprofit organization that receives any amount of county funding, you could have just as big of a problem as if you had a financial interest in a public contract. So I think perhaps highlighting that in our code could be a good use of resources. Again, if we didn't do that, it still is encompassed in there because of the incorporation of state ethics laws, but I think it would really probably bring it home for our employees to see that prohibition very clearly stated.
Councilman Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. President. Inspector General, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I really enjoyed your prepared comments that you read. Can you just tell me why do you want this job?
Well, I love this job. I love my job. I love working with my team. I think we do really great work. I strongly believe in our mission, and I think that we do make a really positive impact on the county operations. So it's very rewarding, and
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Chairman. A couple of years ago, we did that whole whistleblower thing,
We did.
protected, not. Can you tell me, how did it impact it? Did it give people more comfort level to bring them to you? And what is the process of the beginning of a complaint? It starts here, and it goes there, and then it wraps up here, so everybody can understand that.
sure. So the whistleblower policy, which was passed in April of 2022, it did expand the ways that somebody can report a whistleblower complaint. So before, it used to just be to the Agency of Inspector General. Now, if somebody's comfort level is more with perhaps reporting to their supervisor or the Department of Human Resources, they can also do that. And per the code, that complaint is required to ultimately make it to our agency. When our agency receives a complaint, we have a pretty well-defined complaint intake process and a triage process. That complaint is entered into our case management system as a complaint, and then within a week, we triage that complaint, which means we discuss what is the best path forward for that complaint. If it is something that alleges wrongdoing by an individual or a department within our jurisdiction, and it's an allegation of an ethics code violation or fraud, waste, abuse, then it would be appropriate to spin that matter into an investigation, assign an investigator and a secondary investigator, and go down that path. If it's something that would be more appropriately handled by a different department, then we make sure that complaint gets into the right hands, and we make sure that the complainant is informed of that process if it is something that our department is not going to be handling.
Through the chair, this is an odd one, just came to me. What happens if someone from your office is investigated? Do you have to put that somewhere? And if you gave it to somebody, who would that be?
So if we were in a situation where there was a conflict of interest, the code provides that we would recuse to and the Department of Law would then look at that allegation.
Mr. Chairman, as the chairman of the committee, you do a wonderful job. You're always prepared. You are pleasant, but you have a sternness about you when you need it. So I think you're perfect for this job. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Ms. Beeler, 14 years ago, we created legislation when we were building out this government around the front companies, the concerns and challenges around front companies. Can give us an assessment of where we are now, 14 years later. Do you still find them? Do you find that that's less of an issue? What is the reality, the state of the union, so to speak?
So we still have had a couple instances where we have looked into whether or not a business was operating as a front company. We have not found any violations to date. However, one of the areas that we do hope to have an opportunity to look further into is our contracting and procurement processes, including just that concern that there might be organizations that are acting as a front company and taking opportunities away from true small business, minority business, women-owned businesses.
Have you had to debar any companies as a result of it in
No.
your time?
Not as of yet. But if we did have to, that would result in a 3-year debarment.
Have you received any charges of any accusations of front companies existing?
We have, and we have looked into 2 or 3 instances, but those all turned out to be unsubstantiated.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there are no, yes, go right ahead, Councilwoman.
Well, I just wanted to ask, where do you see, through the chair to the Inspector General, where do you see you leading us with the office? What are some of your ideas and creative thoughts?
So my hopes for the future are, of course, to continue doing what we're doing, but I would like to expand our data analytics program to be looking at a few other county operations on a continuous basis. And as I mentioned, we have looked at individual instances or individual allegations concerning our contracting and procurement processes. I would like to get a bigger, better picture of that in the future. So that's somewhere I would like to see us heading, and also to continue our outreach as it relates to our ethics code and our ethics laws. One of the things we've tried to do is increase our approachability and accessibility, because yes, while the Agency of Inspector General is an oversight entity, the Inspector General serves as the chief ethics officer for the county. So it's very important that we are approachable and accessible. So we've begun sending out regular email blasts to county employees concerning the ethics rules, which has really prompted a lot of response and good feedback. And I'm hoping to do more in-person ethics training just to really increase that approachability and accessibility. So,
Will that involve working the data analytics? Will that involve working with the IT department? Have you had conversations?
so we have a data analytics program manager in our agency who is responsible for writing the scripts and pulling the data and running the data through the script to generate the results, and then we look into those results. We do have to work with IT sometimes as it relates to making sure he has the access he needs, but other than that, we don't need to work with IT. He's able to perform all those functions on his own.
Do you think this data analytics will assist us with future cost savings?
Yes, I do think so. I think it's already been successful in the areas where we have begun our continuous monitoring.
All right, if there are no further questions, we will entertain a motion for second reading for later tonight and third reading on next week, December 3rd.
Make the motion for second reading? Second.
Properly moved and seconded by Councilman Kelly. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Could you add my name, Mr.
Now
President?
let's add Councilman Sweeney's name.
Mine too, please.
And Councilman Kelly's name. And Councilwoman Conwell's name.
Mine as well.
Councilman Miller.
Love Fest.
My goodness, we're taking all the suspense out of it. No, that's all right, well deserved.
Thank you. Thank
All
you so
right.
much, everyone.
Okay. All right, with that, okay, I am now going to pass the gavel literally, figuratively to Councilman Miller so he can chair our next item for our budget hearing, and then I will continue the remainder of our agenda after Councilman Miller. So at this time, Councilman Miller, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I would ask the clerk to please read the resolution into the record.
Resolution 2024-0407, adopting the 2024-2025 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program annual update for 2025.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank Director Parfiowitz, Chief Gallagher, the departmental directors, council staff, and my colleagues for working with me on the budget update. Following extensive consultations, I recommend a package of 5 amendments as follows. Number 1, the first 2 pay for the costs of collective bargaining agreements with protective service officers and child support specialists. Second, the next one keeps the $5 million in the HHS levy fund, rather than transferring to the general fund. The third one, Councilman Gallagher brought to our attention that the new jail food service contract that we're going to approve tonight costs $6 million for each of the next 3 years, but there was only $3.1 million in the 2025 budget. So the next item adds the additional $2.9 million and change to bring the total up to $6 million to fully cover the cost of the new jail food service contract. And finally, we add an additional $400,000 to the options program to maintain senior meals and buy time, to assess demand and consider funding alternatives so that we can meet the growing need for these services. So I would like to ask if we could have a motion to approve these amendments in concept, and then hopefully at tonight's meeting, Director Parfiowicz will have the formal substitute for us that we can incorporate at the council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and as you requested, we'll hold my other amendment to make whole the overtime for the sheriff's budget until next week, and we'll have a discussion.
We'll have further discussion. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, the amendment is agreed to, and as I'm sure you know, Ms. Simon presented an amendment yesterday, and if she were here, I would ask her to present it now, but since she is not, I will suggest to her that she can present it tonight on second reading at the council meeting. So then, our next thing is if I could have a motion to refer the budget resolution to the full council for second reading at tonight's council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion is agreed to. It is so recommended. And I now turn the gavel back over to Council President Jones to continue the meeting.
All right. So at this time, Madam Clerk, you can read the next item into the record.
Resolution 2024-0432, awarding a total sum not to exceed $2,850,000 to the Gateway Economic Development Corporation for maintenance and upgrades to the Gateway Complex located in the city of Cleveland.
If appropriate, a motion to refer to the full body can be considered for second reading. Is there any discussion? Yes. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Eric Chanis, Chief of Staff. This resolution 2024-0432 and its companion resolution 2024-0448 are companion pieces to address funding shortfalls related to Gateway. And so I'd be happy to begin the conversation in the club's presentations here, or if you would prefer to wait until the next resolution is discussed.
Are there any questions? Then we will wait.
Okay, very good.
Well, is there a motion? In fact, Eric, before you sit down, I'm just asking, are there any questions of anyone? Mayor Turner has just walked in. Let the record reflect the councilwoman is present.
As well as Councilmember Schron.
Yes, and Councilmember Schron. Again, of anyone, are there any questions of Chief Eric Janis, again, regarding this $2.8 million for the Gateway Corporation? Not, are we prepared to entertain a motion to refer to the full body for second reading?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
May I
All
have
right.
clarification of who seconded? Thank you.
Miller. All right, thank you. At this time, we will have our discussion around our general bond obligation. Is there someone to speak to this matter?
Mr. President, members of council, Eric Janis again, Chief of Staff. As I mentioned earlier, Resolution 2024-0448, companion piece to 2024-0432, collectively would provide additional revenue to the Gateway Development Corporation in order to meet obligations associated from the county with providing funds for capital improvements. We have several guests with us today. I want to introduce Gigi Benjamin, who is the chair of the Gateway Board, along with Gateway staff, as well as representatives from both the Cleveland Guardians and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm going to turn it over to them, if you're okay with it, Mr. President. The two clubs have a brief presentation for the members of council, and then after that, we'll have Walter and Bob France come forward to talk about the mechanics of what's proposed, and then we'll all be here to answer any questions should you have them. So if you're okay with that, we can invite the clubs up to present. Very good, thank you.
Mr. President, members of the council, thank you for having us. Neil Weiss from Cleveland Guardians.
Good afternoon. Anthony Bonavita with the Cleveland Cavaliers Rock Containment Group.
Thank you for having us today. We've just got a couple of slides. We're not going to slide you to death. I know you see plenty of slides on a regular basis. First of all, I want to say thank you to the council president, members of council, as well as the county administration for your collaboration on working through this question. Very much appreciated for all your time today. So I'm going to spend a couple of seconds just talking about where this money goes, because I think that's one of the questions that comes about. We'll just start with a little bit of context. So as a reminder for the capital repair process, things that are defined as capital repairs. I'm going to speak to Progressive Field and the Guardians, and Anthony will speak to the Cavs. So for the Guardians and Progressive Field, Gateway is responsible for all capital repairs, regardless of cost. Those capital repairs are identified via a process called a Facilities Condition Assessment. We refer to it as an FCA. That happens on a regular basis. The last one was completed in 2022. There is a new one underway right now that Gateway has commissioned and started, and we're working collaboratively with them on that. That'll be done by Q3 of 2025. The output of that is vetted by third-party experts, engineers and the like, using industry standards around things like mechanical, electrical, plumbing, concrete, fire protection, et cetera, all the types of things I think you've heard before. And based upon that, requests are made to the Gateway Board for performing capital repairs. Those requests are continue to be vetted by the board, by the Gateway Board, by Gigi and her team. And then if they are approved, they're sent to the city and county for final approval and then for funding. So that's the process, the way that it works. It's part of the lease obligations that are in our lease with Gateway. So if we flip one more slide, we can talk a little bit about examples of what those types of things are. So this is obviously not a comprehensive list, but these are actually here and now types of capital repairs that are either approved and in progress or approved and will be started relatively soon. So the things that are in yellow are in progress right now, and the board approved amount is next to them in the column on the right. The things that are in green, blue, aqua, are things that are approved but have not started, but will be starting relatively soon. So these are things that are relatively straightforward, but I'm going to touch on a couple of them just to make sure they're clear as to what they are. So the first item in yellow, which is called a subroof, that's an example of something that at a large venue, gravity always wins, right? So water is taken downhill, it comes through concrete, it eventually has to land somewhere in an effort for it to not land on millions of dollars worth of equipment in a fan-facing area, a clubhouse where players are, et cetera. There's what's called a subroof, which is a bunch of metal panels together, a bunch of gutters to redirect that water somewhere else. Subroof at Progressive Field is original to the ballpark. It's 30 years old. It's well past its useful life. It's being replaced as part of a capital repair. Other examples are pretty straightforward, right? The elevator in the administrative building, various food and beverage equipment, things in blue, right, that are coming up, which have been approved, but which haven't been started yet. A couple of them, our emergency generator, right? Our emergency generator is original to the ballpark. It needs to be replaced and upsized and made relevant for today's needs and today's standards. Everything else in there is relatively straightforward. I think one other big one, you hear this term AHUs all the time. Those are air handling units that every building has. This building has many of them. That essentially circulates air from here to there. Those are all past their useful life. Gateway has done a good job on replacing some of them already. This is for the remainder of them. In a building our size, there's upwards of 35 to 40 of those. Going forward on the right-hand side of this slide, there'll obviously be more items like this. It's a large building that's 30 years old. It doesn't have a roof. It will continue to need to be maintained and repaired. Things like switchboards and amps and distribution panels, a new replacement security radio system that's original to the ballpark. There's a regular amount of concrete repair and placement. It's outdoors. The weather in Northeast Ohio, as we know, gets warm, gets cold, rains, freezes, gets sunny, et cetera. Concrete expands and contracts, cracks, needs to be repaired and replaced. Vertical transportation, right? We've got a lot of elevators and escalators to keep them safe and secure for our fans and our staff and our players. They have to be replaced when they end their useful life. And things like storm and sump pumps, right? Water always wins, and when it tries to find places to damage, so you've got to find ways to redirect it out to gutters and sewer systems and things like that. So I'll stop there. Anthony from the Cavs has a similar conversation for how it relates to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse.
Thank you, Neil. So a little bit of everything Neil said, we do the same as it relates to the overall process. But the difference is we're responsible for everything under $500,000. So we take care of all projects and all things that are necessary to keep the building operating. One thing, I'm entering my 15th year here, and the previous group that was here 15 years before me did a fantastic job of just making sure that they, from day one, put dollars behind the investment of maintaining these buildings. So the two projects, if we can start flipping through here, that we have currently in process and have already completed one of them, are vertical transportation, which is our elevators and escalators, which are original to the building in 1994. So 30 years, and if you can imagine the use of elevators, specifically in our type of environment, it's abnormal compared to what you would see in a normal office setting. The elevators move with a large amount of people, very quickly throughout many days of the year. So the staff has done a really good job of maintaining these elevators, and we're currently operating with them still. So that process is slated to start in March. We will replace every single vertical transportation in the building over an 18-month span, including both the escalators, which are, enormous projects to undertake, especially during a season, but we have to get them done. So that project is in process and will be started, like I said, in March of '25. Flipping forward, we just completed, so this is just an example of the current day elevators, and the proposed elevators. Obviously, the interior finishes are one thing, but it's really about what happens below. All the equipment, the antiquated equipment that's down there, we're running out of places to find parts, things like that. So it's really more about that piece of it than it is about the look and feel, though the look and feel obviously is important, as just like we would in your home. So the next slide will just show the backbone of the building as it relates to what we call our control center. This allows us to broadcast content throughout the facility. And again, this was extremely outdated. There was original components of this. We did upgrade some of it in our last, process in 2014, which is 10 years ago, which in technology, as you know, is almost 20 years ago. So we've just completed this project, and we're back up and running. And we are, within, if we go to the next slide, we estimated both projects to be completed within one more slide forward, please, because we talked about that. Completed within $24 million, and we're going to come in at that number. So we're excited to get the elevator project going. It's one of the things that we've been looking to do for a while and have not had a chance to do. And we look forward to completing that project here in the next 18 months. So thank you.
Do you want us to stay or should we?
Are there any questions? Councilman Sweeney, and then Councilwoman Conwell.
Thank you. Just, the Indians play, or the Guardians have a break in their stadium. You don't, because you're 24 or 365 days a year.
Yes.
What's the difference between managing the repairs? It has to be a little bit more convenient for the Guardians to be able to.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilman Sweeney, I think both venues have challenges. Obviously, Anthony in managing the venue there has challenges where the events never stop, right? They have concerts and other things that go on all the time. For us, we have to really focus on the off-season because it's very difficult for us to do any of these in season when we have 81 games and then when we have playoff games as well. That means we're doing a lot of it in the winter. So the moment the season ends, outside, we've had people there since 3 hours after the last out. We were hoping that last out was going to be after our parade, but it was after the, Game 5 of the ALCS. And they started hours afterwards. So we have to manage all those in a 5 to 6 month period of time. Their challenges are different but equally as hard.
Thank you. That's just, and through the chair, you want to just, what your challenges are?
So through the chair.
Handle it, basically.
Yeah, well, we had obviously we did the transformation where we shut down, for 2 summers. So that was a big part. It's not, not normal that we'd be able to shut down like that. So every project that we've done, we've had to manage throughout, having the building open. So the elevator operation of the project is going to be extremely challenging for us and how we try to, sequence it out and not inconvenience fans and guests too much. But it's as long as you communicate and you're out in front of it, I think people understand. And it's our goal to try to make it as seamless as possible. But yeah, there are challenges to our overall schedule, but that's a good thing. I mean, if we had a lot of months to do a lot of work, that wouldn't be good for any of us.
And through the chair, I just want to thank you for being true partners with the city and the county and making it work with the deal that was struck many years ago. Thank you, Mr. President.
Through the chair, I have 2 questions for Anthony and one for Neil. So, Anthony, what is the life of an elevator? What's the lifespan? Because I know you guys use it a lot.
Through the president, the standard life for an elevator is roughly around 20 years, 20 to 25 years. So we have gotten significantly more, than that in the current elevators, specifically with the amount of use that the elevators get. And so I think way before me, they made, significant investments in maintaining those elevators, and it's something that we've just continued, since I've been here. And so hope that answers your question.
Yeah, are all the elevators being upgraded, meaning new everything?
Yes, all the cabs. I mean, we're not, obviously the shafts will remain, but we're replacing all the cabs and infrastructure. There's a couple of elevators we put in during the transformation that will not have to be upgraded. They're only 5 years old. So those 2 elevators will not be upgraded as part of this process.
Okay, little added question to that. So for here, we have, for Public Works, employees go out and maintain a look-see at the bridges. Do you have someone like that that's dedicated to elevators and how to know when it's the right time for maintenance, where you grade them at a certain rate or something like that?
Yeah, we have a contract with a company called Tyson Krupp, and they come in and maintain the elevators. They come in whenever we have an elevator or escalator go down. We'll call them and they'll show up to repair the elevator. We try not to have any of those vertical transportations down for a long period of time. And so, yes, there's a it's a significant number annually for us to maintain it, but it's the right thing to do. And so it's something we'll continue to do as we move forward into this new. They will need to be maintained just like anything else.
Thank you. And through the chair, my question to Neil, you put the approved and forthcoming CRs. So that just a question about the anticipated forthcoming CR needs. Obviously, that's not included in the $20 million ask. How do you prepare to or plan on getting those things fixed?
Through the chair to Councilwoman Conwell, so we work with Gateway very closely on these conversations all the time. Gateway has kicked off the 2025 FCA process, so a new facility condition assessment that identifies over the coming 1, 3, 5, 10, 15 years, which of these things will have to be done when. So as those are identified, we will work with them like we always do on seeing what can be approved and when. In terms of, from a funding standpoint, that's going to be a collaborative process to see how and when they can be funded and when the work can be done. The leases do obligate all capital repairs to be completed via Gateway, but it is a collaboration and it's something we work with them on a very regular basis. The FCA will be the thing that will tell us what has to be done when. So when is the next set of things? When do the switchboards have to be upgraded? When do we have to do further concrete work? When do the storm pumps have to be upgraded? The last one was in 2022. The new one in 2025 will be a fresh look at that.
And one final question through the chair. Have you presented a list of all the repairs that I guess we've done or Gateway has done?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if are you talking about for the life of the building or more recently?
Recent, yeah.
Recently. We have not. Our friends at Gateway may have, and I'm pretty sure they have that information and they have provided it in the past. We can take it as a takeaway if it's something you need to know.
You can send that to us. We appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Further questions? The third-party vetting that is done, is part of the vetting process to determine what the cost should be or the estimated cost for the repairs. How does that, amongst all the partners, how is that determined? Whether you pay X amount of dollars for repairs or a lower amount or a higher amount, how is that determined when a repair is needed?
So to the chair, I'd say there's a several-step process. In that FCA, there'll be rough order of magnitudes or ROMs that are put towards it that'll say, okay, this is generally what we think the cost will be, as well as potential escalation, depending upon how long it's going to be until you perform that cost. So let's say it's going to cost $1 million to do something, but you don't think it's going to be done for 7 years. You'll put an escalation factor on that to say, in 7 years, that $1 million will cost $1.1 million, et cetera. But even with that ROM, once the actual CR goes through the Gateway board and the Gateway staff, they'll then vet it at that point in time and get real costs associated to it and multiple bids to determine exactly how much it's going to cost. So if the SCA said it costs $1 million, they'll still go back through experts and engineers and whoever the right people are, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, civil, et cetera, and identify exactly what it's going to cost. And then they'll get multiple bids to do the actual work, to hone it down to the exact cost, and then they'll add a small amount of buffer on top for contingencies and unforeseen conditions, et cetera. I don't know if you want to add to that or.
Okay, thank you. As we move through our process, obviously this is 20 million towards 40 million. Any updates on Cleveland status?
I'm happy to answer, and if anybody else wants to jump in here. We were at the Finance Committee yesterday. We had a spirited conversation with them, and Gateway led that conversation in terms of from a QA standpoint. It was not voted on yesterday, but we're standing by to answer any questions they have for when they bring it back through Finance and City Council as a whole for a vote.
Mr. Chair, I would only add that we've had conversations with the city administration. I think they're recognizing the need for assistance here, the obligation associated with it, and their council's working through their process. So we're still optimistic that that will move through.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you, Neil. Thank you, Anthony, for, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Simon.
I have a follow-up
question.
about the City of Cleveland question. We have separate mandatory obligations to fund this, correct? The county and respective of the city. They have an independent obligation. No?
I think the way, and I'll look for anybody to correct me if I'm incorrect, I think the way that we've discussed it, council member, is that because Gateway is a city-county entity, that we look at it as a shared obligation, a shared deed to find both short-term and eventually a long-term solution. And so we've been approaching it in that spirit. That I don't think there's any difference in terms of who provides what dollar amount to Gateway. Ultimately, these are obligations of Gateway, which is an entity that is a creation of the city and the county.
So is there a scenario in which the county council tonight passes this and City of Cleveland Council does not, that we would be approached by Gateway to fund the gap.
Mr. Chair, to the council member, I'm not going to hypothesize on what might happen. We are optimistic that the city will recognize and meet their obligations. All of we have talked about with the clubs is what we think our obligation is and what we can do, which is the $20 million pieced together.
So it's possible there's a scenario in which you would come back to us because the city of Cleveland says, no, we're not doing this. Since there's no legal obligation per se for the city of Cleveland to step up and meet a requirement, there'd be a gap, and potentially the county would have to come in to fill that. And I know you're not but that's a possibility if the city of Cleveland doesn't step up.
So, Councilmember, I guess here's how I would respond to that. In addition to what we are proposing tonight, we are continuing to have conversations with Gateway, with the clubs, and with the city about a long-term solution. And it is our hope that we can find one in the coming months. My expectation is not that we are going to come back and ask for additional dollars until that long-term solution is identified from a county standpoint, irrespective of what the city does or doesn't do.
I understand that there's no guarantee that we're going to get this gap filled by the city of Cleveland. I hope it's true, and just we're all on notice that we're going to fulfill our obligation as I see it. But, I hope nobody's coming back to us again to ask for more.
Councilmember, we feel the same way.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just as a side note, not for you, Mr. Janis, legally, I guess at some point I want something from the law department about that scenario and how that will be handled if the city does not fulfill its obligation and what that means to us as the county. Thank you.
Councilman.
I guess for Mr. Janis, who's carrying the note on this?
Mr. Chair, to Councilmember Gallagher, I think now would be a good time to call up Walter and Bob and have them explain the mechanics of how the legislation would work, to answer your question.
My question is the last time we carried the note, and those days should be long gone until they come to the table and do the right thing. So I hope he's not going to tell me we're carrying their note. Please.
Come on up.
Did you walk into it?
Perhaps.
Well, that's a yes or no.
Bob Franz, Managing Director of Stiefel, County's financial advisor. So the way that we are proposing that the county cover our $20 million, or a portion of our $20 million, is the issuance of a one-year bond anticipation note. It's slightly different than what the county has done in the past, which is fixed rate long-term bonds for 20, 30 years, et cetera. What we're proposing here is notes, one-year notes to be issued in anticipation of bonds. So it's a very common funding mechanism in the state of Ohio for cities, counties, school districts. The state just did one, a three-month note just the other day. Just to provide some interim financing. So it's a very common mechanism to fund capital project costs. Each year is a new issuance. So we will be before this council every year until this note goes away, with ultimate funding being extinguished of the note. So the way that we're anticipating that structuring this is every year we come back to council and we then provide a suggestion or a proposal to the council to say this is how we're paying it off. So if we're issuing $14.5 million of one-year notes, $14.5 million comes due in a year. Whatever we don't pay off with principal, we'll pay the interest. Whatever amount is not paid, we roll that for another year. It's a very common funding tool. And additionally, what we're proposing here is that the county treasurer buys this directly. So we're essentially placing this note with the county. So the county is issuing the note directly to the county treasurer as an investment, as a general obligation note, which the county has invested in before. So we're essentially paying the treasurer a market rate
For our share.
for our share.
Am I incorrect in saying that we carried the note last time? For both?
For the project, yes, yeah, to the councilman, yes.
Those days are long gone. Okay, that makes sense. It wasn't so bad. Thank you.
Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to Mr. France, will it be paid off in 5 years? So you're talking about we would borrow this money from ourselves or whatever the case may be, but we heard from Neil stating that they have future things that will come up in about 5 years. So just wondering how all that's gonna, we haven't paid off this and we get presented with some more.
To the councilwoman, we can pay this off in 20 years, we can pay it off in 1 year. It ultimately depends on how the revenues are coming in, how the county best determines its resources. The great thing about this is the flexibility, so that if things occur in the next couple of years and there are revenues available from whatever source that becomes available, we can pay the whole note off in 1-2 years. If things happen, it provides us flexibility to go out longer as well. So it's the flexibility. So it's kind of a independent analysis of this group of projects versus another group of projects. And I think, as Chief of Staff just mentioned, that we're working on the long-term solution as well. So hopefully this all gets solved at the same time.
So that's what I'm concerned about. I know we can pay it off. I'm just concerned about if we go the long route and then we get, before we pay it off, we get presented with new repairs that we must, are obligated to pay. So just wondering if you guys had thought about that and as you're thinking about your long-term solutions.
Understood. And I would say nothing is off the table. Our goal, or at least my goal, and I think Walter and Mike and the administration's goal, is to pay this off as fast as possible, but within reason and trying to be prudent about managing the resources of the county. So.
You indicated it's going to be a renewable annual. Every year you're going to look at it, and then you're going to say, okay, we're going to refinance it again for another year. At least as my understanding it. We really don't have a choice other than to refinance it, do we, at any point? It's not like you're making an affirmative choice every year. You might be making a choice as to whether you go 1 year or a longer term, but the obligation is there, and we have to face it. We're gonna face it one of two ways: either rolling it over every year or going out for long-term debt. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so with that, this will actually be part of impacting our reserves, because we're obligated to pay this at this point in time, whether we're doing it on a 1 year rolling or whatever the length of time that the two, would that be a correct statement as far as its impact on our general obligation reserves?
It will be, there's no question, this will be counted as general obligation debt.
Right.
And so
So
it
the
will
whole
be
thing,
indebtedness of the county.
Even though you keep calling it a 1 year, there's no charade. We can't walk away from a year and say, oh, okay, take it back, find somebody else for the stadium. We'll do, it's not like you couldn't walk away from any other debt like this. So we're bound. So what does this do in relationship to our, we calculate what it's going to do for our reserve percentage we have to keep on board based on our county legislation?
We haven't officially done a calculation like that, but generally, we're anticipating, about a $2 million payment, I think, is what you worked out. Million or two. We're hopeful that our revenue starts to ramp back up again, general fund, and we can pay this thing off earlier.
Okay, but it's something that should be calculated to see what if any, does it have on our,
Be very minimal on our reserve.
yeah. Well, you keep rolling the 1 year, it's going to be minimal. If you do the full, if you put the commitment down for the full length of the 14 million, it's going to be a higher number.
Of course.
The only reason it's not the higher number is because we're playing a little bit of a charade by moving it and calling it only a 1 year obligation.
Absolutely.
It's not, I mean, we're only kidding ourselves to think that it's not the full obligation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Councilman Miller?
So just a comment that the key to our continuing to be a big league sports town is that we maintain facilities in good condition so that we don't have to replace facilities every 25 years or so. I know they're doing that in some other cities, but we don't have that kind of resources here. So I think it's prudent that we move forward on this and help provide the resources to keep these facilities in good shape for hopefully many decades to come. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Anything else, gentlemen? Thank you. This time, we'll prepare ourselves for executive session. All meetings of the Cuyahoga County Council are open to the public under the Ohio Open Meetings laws. Under that law, council may go into executive session during a meeting for specifically authorized purposes. During executive session, council confers outside of the hearing of the public. Council may not make any decisions about any matters in executive session. All decisions are made in public. This afternoon, the council will go into executive session for the purpose of discussing a collective bargaining matter. During this time, our live stream will be down, and we ask all those not specifically needed for the executive session to remain in council chambers. Council members will convene in the adjacent Committee Room A and will re-enter the meeting once the executive session has ended. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing a collective bargaining matter?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schron? Ms. Conwell? Ms. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens? Stevens stepped away. Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Council President Jones?
Yes,
The motion carries.
the ayes have it. We will adjourn the meeting for executive session.
Wait, hold on 1 second, please. Talk to the lady.
It's just not right.